designed them on.
1957, yeah? You built it? Wow. And you've lived here since then? So you've seen Bryan College Station change a lot, haven't you?
Of course, I grew up 20 miles of Bryan.
Right, where'd you grow up?
Wheelock.
Oh, in Wheelock? Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've seen Bryan College Station where there wasn't anything at College Station except a railroad depot.
Yes, sir.
My family moved to Wheelock in 1925.
Uh-huh.
So I've seen this country since 1925.
What did your family do? Were they farmers or?
Well, my grandfather owned 1,400 acres of land, and he was getting a little old. I grew up I was born in McGregor.
Yes, sir.
You know where that is?
Yeah, up near Waco. Right.
And my daddy was co-owner of a cotton gin and a grain supplier and dealer. And in 1925, that gin burned.
Right.
And my daddy told his partner if he would take whatever insurance there was available and take the debts that they owed, and he needed to move to Wheelock and help his father operate his farm. And he had a number of sharecroppers on the place, and my daddy operated the cattle and the sharecroppers did the farming.
I see.
So I grew up around Wheelock from 1925, and then in 1936, well, I went to school in Wheelock. And at that time, you couldn't graduate from high school. You had to go somewhere else to graduate. And when we were fixing to be in the 10th grade, they started busing the students to Franklin. So I graduated from Franklin.
I see.
And in 1936, I went to start A&M. I couldn't afford to live on the campus because of the times. And my grandfather had a 1928 Chevrolet, and he told me if I could keep that Chevrolet running, I could use it and I could commute.
And this car was 8 years old, right? So
yeah,
okay.
And there was always several people working at A&M or going to school, and so I'd carry a whole carload, and they'd help me with my expenses.
I see. Yeah.
So I commuted 4 years back and forth to A&M. Worked on the campus, worked for the landscape department.
Really?
Back in those days, all the mowing was done with a push lawnmower.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And I've seen times when there'd be 20 or 25 of us, just one right behind the other one, mowing. Didn't have a motor, Tom.
Right.
Push mower.
Sure.
And then I dug in the flower beds, and I worked in the greenhouse. But I was taking civil engineering. I wasn't taking that, but it was a job.
Yeah.
Got 30 cents an hour, and they let me work 40 hours a month.
I'll be darned.
That is $12.
Right.
And that $12 made all the difference in the world.
Oh, I'll bet it did. $12 a month. Yeah.
Because my mother fixed me a lunch, and I'd just go sit in the car and eat my lunch at noon, and pick up my passengers and drive home. And there was always, as I said, somebody working, and they had to work through the summer.
Right.
So I'd go to summer school also.
Mm-hmm.
And so I graduated in 1940.
Civil engineering?
Civil engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately went to work for the highway department.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent me to Hearn. Well, I went to work in June of 40 immediately when I got out of A&M, and February of 41 I got orders to report to Fort Crockett, Texas, as a second lieutenant. See, back then, you know, everybody was in the military.
Right.
And the orders said 54th Coast Artillery, they call that CAC, Coast Artillery Corps, and in parentheses, COL. I had no idea what that meant. Got down to Fort Crockett and found out that all enlisted men and NCOs were black, and all the officers were white. And there were about, it was a regiment. I mean, yeah, it was a regiment.
Right.
And there were about 100 officers, and about 65 of them were former Aggies, which made quite a camaraderie.
Right. Sure.
And it was a 6-inch gun outfit. A lot of people call them long toms. And we sort of got activated at Fort Crockett, which was on the west end of Galveston Island.
Right.
But we were to assemble and draw equipment at a camp that was being built out just north of Galveston called Camp Wallace.
I see.
It was being built, and so after we all got signed in and a few of the NCOs came on duty, we moved out to this Camp Wallace. Drew our equipment, drew the guns, and the guns were old solid rubber tires, old World War I guns, pulled by TD tractors.
I see.
And it was called a mobile outfit. wasn't a in-place gun outfit. They were to be moved as needed.
Right.
And we stayed there till about I guess it was late in the year, and they moved us to Camp Davis, North Carolina, which was about 30 miles north of Wilmington. They had built a camp there called Camp Davis.
And this was 1941, so we're...
That was back, that would have been in...
Okay.
Yeah, it was... no,
So Pearl Harbor had...
No, we moved up there late in the early fall, because...
Okay.
Because we were there when they struck Pearl Harbor.
Okay.
So we were at Camp Davis, and the idea was possibly to use, you know, there were subs showing up on the East Coast, and we were to be part of the defenses of the East Coast.
Right. With
those guns. We had 24 of the guns, I believe, in this regiment. And we were only there until about early next spring, and they decided that California was the most vulnerable due to the Japanese. So we were moved to California. We had some guns at San Francisco, we had some at Santa Cruz, we had some guns at Monterey, San Luis Obispo. We were all the way from San Luis Obispo to San Francisco. Sort of interesting, we had some guns right under the Golden Gate Bridge.
Really?
And the purpose of that was the harbor defenses of San Francisco had these long-range big guns up high, and they couldn't shoot right down here. So a ship could come in underneath those big guns.
Right.
So they put our guns right down under the Golden Gate Bridge, so that if some ship came in under where those guns could shoot, then they'd be a target for us.
Right. I see.
So we were very unusual to have guns right under the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right.
And see the cars going across.
What was your specific job? Were you a gunner or?
No, I was a maintenance officer for the whole regiment.
I see.
My job was to supervise and keep running all the vehicles and tractors and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, each battery and each company had their own maintenance people, but I was the regimental maintenance officer.
Okay.
And I had to go from back and forth and coordinate the maintenance of the whole regiment.
Okay.
And we never saw a sub. One of the gun batteries was in St. Louis Obispo, and the battery commander one Sunday morning about 7 o'clock thought he saw a sub coming in, and he fired at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning at St. Louis Obispo, and I think he woke up everybody in town because those things did make a racket. And we had target practice a whole lot, and I had the job of supervising the survey crew that laid in the guns.
Mm-hmm.
See, the way guns shot out into the ocean like that was by triangulation. We'd have a baseline that we knew the length of, and then you could, by triangulation, you could come out here and you could tell how far the ship was out here. Are you a mathematician?
Not much, but I understand what you're saying, yeah.
The two sides of
right.
the baseline, you could tell
exactly
how far out they were.
Right.
So we'd have to measure in the baseline and then put the guns there, and that way they knew where to fire.
Right.
And I also had the job of making a target to pull out there some 10 miles out so that we could pull and they could fire at this moving. It was a floating target.
Mm-hmm.
A boat would have about 1,000-foot cable, and he'd pull that thing and then they'd shoot. That's the way they had target practice.
I see.
That is another one of my duties.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
And we stayed there until 44. It was, if you had to have war duty, it was pretty nice duty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the only problem was, of course, it was totally blacked out at night.
Right.
If you had any kind of light shining out a window, there'd be somebody bumping on your window,
mm-hmm.
telling you to cut that light out.
Right.
But you couldn't. Towns were just black dark, no light whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to drive an automobile at night, it had a light called a blackout light. It had a little slit in the light so that at least the car could see you coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You didn't do much driving
right.
or any other time because of gas rationing.
Yes, sir.
So in late, probably I guess the fall of 44, they decided that the Japs were not going to make an invasion.
Mm-hmm.
So these artillerymen were, the unit was disbanded and they made combat engineers out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I took one of the battalions back to Camp Rucker, Alabama. Took 400 and something men on the train and took them back to.
What rank were you now?
Captain.
Okay.
Took them back to Camp Rucker, Alabama, mm-hmm. and I was relieved of those people at that time, and mm-hmm. I told them I thought I ought to be back in the Corps of Engineers, and applied to be, my commission changed to Corps of Engineers, and they sent me to the engineer school up at Fort Belvoir. And when I got back from that, then they assigned me to an engineer maintenance company,
mm-hmm.
a company of 185 men that we repaired maintenance on bulldozers and motor graders and power plants and any type of engineer equipment.
Mm-hmm.
We had mobile trucks that had all this equipment in it, had power plants to run the milling machines and
Right.
all the equipment that they needed to repair equipment. But when they assigned me to it and I got back from the school, I had a 2-month sailing day to go to Europe.
I see.
Didn't know a soul in the company, officers or men.
Mm-hmm.
So they were already getting ready to go. And we finally packed up, and in February of '45, we sailed from New York.
Mm-hmm.
We went up to Camp Kilmer in New York. We're there for 3 days, and took us by boat over to Pier 31. I remember what the pier number was. We loaded at night, almost in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Cold, man, it was cold in New York. We went from Camp Kilmer over to the pier in an old automobile ferry.
I see.
And they put sheets, big sheets down each side to try to cut the wind out. But man, it was cold.
Oh, man.
All of the buoys were frozen, and
How long a trip was that?
several hours.
Wow.
Several hours.
Yeah.
We got on that ship, as I said, this was in February, and it was good, nice, and warm. That was, even though we were going to war, it was glory.
Was it a converted ocean liner? Is that
Yes,
what it was?
yes.
Yeah.
It was formerly a South American liner.
Uh-huh.
I imagine that in its day, it probably would carry 400 or 500 people on a cruise, and
Right.
we put 5,000 of us on it.
Wow. So you got to know each other. Yeah. Yeah.
I tell you, every nook and corner was occupied. The bunks were 4 and 5 high, and there were 5. I guess there were 8 of us, company commanders, in one big stateroom.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had to have all the service records, and had to have all the flashlights and all the pocket knives and all those things. They wouldn't let the soldiers have those on the boat,
Mm-hmm.
All that was in this stateroom. Every morning, first sergeants had to come in, make out morning reports. That stateroom was some kind of busy.
Yeah.
We left out 2 days. I left out in the middle of the night, quietly. We got out of New York and joined a convoy of some 30 ships.
Mm-hmm.
And about the second day out, they were going the northern route. About the second day out, we hit a storm.
Mm.
And it was a storm. I'll tell you, Tom, that boat did everything but turn over.
Mm.
The waves could plumb over the boat, and it would lean this way, and it'd go this way, and the front would come up, and it'd go that way, and the tail would come up, and the propeller would go, And that went on for 2 nights and a day.
Wow.
And I think of the 5,000, there was 4,900 that were sick. Everybody wanted on the top bunk, as you can imagine, and nobody wanted any food whatsoever. And that went on for 2 days and a night. I thought, I don't know how much of the Bible you know about, but you remember the time that Jesus was out in the ocean with the 12 disciples, and they got in the storm.
Yes, sir.
And he was asleep on the boat, and the boat was rocking, and pitching and tumbling, and they went and woke him up to calm the waters. You remember that story?
Yes, sir. I do.
I wondered if he wasn't on the back of that boat that I could go back there and get him and wake him up.
Wake him up, make it stop.
But we survived.
You survived that.
Somehow. And really,
your first battle of the war, right there. You survived that one. Battle
really
of the weather.
I don't know how that boat stood it. It did. The second morning, I was on duty with my troops, and we heard this big crash on the west side of the ship, and all of a sudden, water started down the hallways, and everybody figured we'd been torpedoed. And turned out that one of the big waves had gone up in one of the lifeboats and broke it off, and as it came down, it knocked the porthole out.
Wow.
Which we were relieved.
Right.
But it scared everybody on the boat. But we went on, the ocean calmed down, we had a nice trip for the rest of the way. It took 12 days to go to New York.
And where'd you land?
We landed at Le Havre, France.
In France, okay.
The invasion was all way up in Germany by that time. See, this was February 45. My war was over in May. And they had a temporary pier for the ship to land on. We didn't have to get off in small boats. And took my company up to a little place called Hasselt, Belgium. We assembled up there and then unpacked all of our equipment. We were there for nearly 3 weeks before anybody ever knew we were there, I guess. And we didn't belong to a division or anything. We were a separate company. And we got ready to start operating, and finally we were contacted by our headquarters, and we moved to Liège, Belgium.
Liège, okay.
Liège. And the equipment started coming back into us to be repaired, and then in Liège, Belgium is on one of the big canals, and you know, over there, a world of traffic is by canal. And they had a bunch of cranes, I'm talking about drag line as we call it, that would unload those boats. There were about 40 of those things, and a big part of our mission was to keep those 40 drag lines working. We had mechanics that would do that kind of work, and they were being operated by German POWs.
I see.
So they were not too particular to how they operated them, so there was a lot of work there. They sent one of my platoons, I had 3 platoons, sent one of them up to Antwerp to do the same thing at Antwerp for the ships that were unloading up there. And my headquarters stayed at Hasselt, Belgium, and we operated there until the war was over. Of course, everybody thought when the war was over that we'd probably go to the Pacific.
Right.
So they took all of our winter clothes away from us, gave us summer clothes, took all of our equipment. All we had was personal items, baseballs and bats and so forth, and we played more baseball and games than you ever saw. Just marking time.
Right.
And we did that. Let's see, the war was over in May, and we did that until about July, and we got orders to go to Marseille to be shipped, we thought, home or Pacific, and then the war was over.
Right.
We got word of the war, and so we knew we'd be going home.
Right.
But I got to Marseille with my company, and they pulled them off, sent a high priority company home, and we stayed in Marseille.
Uh-huh.
And they took most of the company commanders and we engineers and gave us different jobs. Took us away from the companies. And I had the most interesting assignment. They had a bunch of German prisoners of war in a camp. There were 6,000 of them in a camp just outside of Marseille called Calais. And they formed companies out of them.
Mm-hmm.
250 Germans in a company,
mm-hmm.
and signed an American engineer officer to the company. And we were doing carpenter work, electric work in pyramidal tents for the troops that were coming through and going home or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I commanded 250 Germans in a company for 3 months.
How about that?
Which is the most unusual assignment for an engineer officer.
Right.
But that really was a pretty interesting assignment.
And what were you doing? What were you making? You were.
Well, they had tents set up, and they were putting wood floors in them, putting electric lights.
Okay.
For the interim time that the troops were coming through and
I see.
Going on to Marseille and shipping out.
Right, I see.
Did that for about 3 months, and then they relieved me of that duty, and we didn't do anything for 2 months.
Uh-huh.
I just traveled all over Europe in my Jeep.
Yeah.
Went to different countries. Went to Switzerland. Went to Italy. Just get in a Jeep and go.
Right.
So then in February, I got orders to come home.
I see.
So I got back home and went back to work for the highway department.
This February of 46?
46.
Uh-huh.
Went back to work for the highway department in April, I guess it was, of 46.
Right.
In Hearn, right where I left.
Yeah.
Worked in Hearn there for 11 years. And then 51, I guess it was, or 52, I joined the Engineer Reserve.
Uh-huh.
420th Engineer Brigade.
Right. Now when you came home, were you still, what rank were you then?
I got a discharge as a major.
As a major, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether you're familiar with the 420th Engineer Brigade that was on Carson Street, the armory.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well, I joined that, stayed in that for 25 years, went up through the ranks. I stayed a major for a number of years, and was promoted to lieutenant colonel. Stayed that for only about 3 years. I was promoted to a full colonel. When I was promoted to a full colonel, I had to get out for a while because there wasn't any slot. So to give me a job, they assigned me to command an engineer group in Dallas. So I commanded that engineer group in Dallas for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, then the slot opened up, and I came back to Bryan, to the brigade here. I was a lieutenant. I was a full colonel for about 3 years, and then the brigade commander retired, and I was given the job of the brigade commander.
Here in Bryan with the I see.
And this 420th here had command of all the engineer reserve troops in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very, very interesting assignment.
Yes, sir.
We had lots of good officers, lots of good enlisted men. And I commanded that for 5 years and retired in 1971.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stayed with the highway department until 77. retired in 77. That's 31 years ago.
So when you retired in 71 as brigade commander, you had been, your rank then was?
1-star general.
1-star general. Okay.
Retired as a brigadier general.
Now this brigade that was still located on Carson Street, right?
Headquarters, yeah.
The headquarters were there, so that's where your office was. And it would train.
We supervised the training of all these various units.
Right.
In the 4 states.
I see.
We were the headquarters for all of it. All the planning was done here. The project assignments and all this.
Did you have to travel a lot to these 4 states? And
I did.
It was a lot of on-hand stuff, right? It was.
I did.
Yeah.
And a lot of course, all my subordinate officers also had to do a lot of traveling.
Right.
And we went to summer camp every year for 2 weeks. And I tried to visit all of my subordinate units in the summertime at least a day or 2 for each camp that was operated.
Right.
And it took a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
The highway department gave 2 weeks of military leave plus my 2 weeks of vacation. So I had 4 weeks that I could devote to visiting. Just really made my appearance at these summer camps.
Right.
And we had summer camps in Corpus Christi, New Mexico, Fort Bliss, Oklahoma, Louisiana.
Right.
We had some divers, these deep sea divers. We had a unit of divers I visited up in Virginia. Then I went to a number of schools. I went to the Green Beret School up in North Carolina, I guess it was. I went to what they call the CBR school in Nevada. That's CBR. That's chemical, biological, radiological.
Right.
For a week.
Right.
Each of those. I went to the Command General Staff School. I went to the National War College. I had the opportunity to do a lot of very, very interesting educational opportunities, military-wise.
Right. Well, 71. Then I guess it was involved with training of troops that were heading to Vietnam. Also, is that? Yeah.
Let's see. I don't believe any of my troops went to Vietnam.
I see. Okay.
President Johnson didn't want the reserve to go to Vietnam.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Right.
We had some that went to Korea.
Yeah,
Ahead of that,
Yeah.
In fact, I hadn't been back home very long, so I got orders for Korea.
I see. Yeah, I was going to ask you about
that. But I had already joined the 420th. And the policy at that time was that they would not pull individual officers out of organized units to go back on active duty.
I see.
So I was pretty well glad with that.
Right.
I had already made a home for myself in a reserve unit.
Right.
My wife wasn't very happy about it either.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Tom, when I got out of A&M, my wife and I got married in August after I graduated in June.
Okay.
So she was with me all the 3 years that I was still in the States.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was going to ask you that. So she was with you until you went off to Europe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which was, I was a whole lot more fortunate than a lot of people that were married and immediately went overseas.
Right.
we were in California about, I don't know what part of my tour out there, but she kept telling me we ought to stay out there after the war. I sort of like California. One night I had already gone. Sometimes we could go home. A lot of times we had to be on duty.
Right.
One night I had already gone to sleep. She was reading, and all of a sudden we had an earthquake.
Oh my goodness.
It was pretty shaky.
Yeah.
She was ready to go to Texas right. She didn't say anything more about staying out in California.
I'll bet. I'll bet. What was your wife's name?
What her name? Lucille.
Lucille?
She was a Scasta.
Oh, okay.
You know, there are lots of Scastas around here.
Right, right.
She was from Wheelock also.
I see.
She and I started in first grade together.
Really?
Went all through high school. When we graduated, she went to Waco to business college, and I started A&M. And after a year, she got her degree she wanted as a stenographer. She got a job at A&M.
Mm-hmm.
So we rode back and forth from Wheelock to A&M for the 4 years I was going to school.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 or 3 times I suggested we get married. She had a job and was making a little money.
All right.
She told me whenever I got a job and a degree, she'd think about it, but not until.
Yeah.
So I graduated in June, and she thought about it 3 months and said it was okay. So we married 3 months after I graduated, went to work for the highway department.
And how long were you married?
2 weeks, she's been dead now 5 years. 2 weeks before she died, we'd been married 63 years.
I see. I see.
She died 5 years ago, August 24th.
I see. And children?
We have one daughter who was married, lived to be 38, and died of leukemia.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
Her husband was James Harvey Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
He was a veterinary student. Josiah started in SMU her college work, I can't think back, about 64, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And did real well at SMU, but she didn't like it. She was too much of an Aggie. And her roommate was going to move to Austin, to Texas, and she asked me about moving with her roommate, and I told her, I said, well, I just don't want you to lose a lot of credit. As far as going to Texas, that's all right, you know, if she couldn't go to A&M.
Right.
So she went over there about a year and a half and met this Aggie that she later married, and they were either over in Austin on the weekend, and she was over there, or he was over here, you know, and finally she asked me, said, how about me transferring to A&M? And I said, well, you know, it's not open yet. And she said, well, I hear some girls going to A&M. So I went to Mr. Heaton, who was a registrar, and I told him I heard that they were letting a few in. That was when Mr. Rudder was here. You know?
Right.
So Mr. Heaton said, take this form and fill it out. And I looked at it, and it said, wife of a student, daughter of a professor, and there was a half a dozen things there. I said, well, she doesn't fit any of those. And he said, well, just turn over on the back and tell me why you want her to go here. And I said, well, I'm paying taxes on the school, and I said, we live close, and she wants to practice teach, and I said, I just like for her to go here. And he just liked that. He said, it's okay. Took her in. That was in 68, I guess.
Yeah.
When they were just very discreetly.
Right. Yeah.
So she graduated A&M with a degree in language, I think it was. She she was a Spanish and French student, and then she and this young fellow that she met got married about the time she was finishing her first year. And he had another year of vet school to go. Mm-hmm. So she got a grant and got a master's degree in health education. Mm-hmm. And she had planned to do that in high schools, you know. And after she got out, there wasn't anything in Bryan College Station that, you know, offered her anything. And she got an offer from, I believe it was down in Victoria. Mm-hmm. But before she even went down there, TTI offered her a job. She, as I said, she was a Spanish major, and they had lots of Spanish people in those TTI schools and work that they did with Spanish engineers. Mm-hmm. And she wrote and monitored the Spanish books for TTI. Mm-hmm. So she worked for TTI for 9 years.
I see. I see.
And then this young man that she married turned out to be a very accomplished wildlife artist.
He did these?
All this stuff is his.
Mm-hmm.
All those pictures around my breakfast room in there, got to be very, very good at it. And after he was doing pretty well at it, she retired from TTI and started promoting and selling his artwork.
I see.
And we're doing extremely well with it. And so I framed all their pictures for him. Mm-hmm. I'd retired, you know.
Right.
So we had a sort of a thing going. He did the artwork, she did the promoting and selling.
Right. And you did the framing.
Pictures for him.
And you sold them.
And she sold them.
I'll be darned.
But she contracted, I don't know how you contract, but she developed
leukemia
in '83 and lived till March of '84.
I see.
She was only sick to her knowledge for 1 year. She may have had some parts of it beforehand.
Yeah.
But she's the only child we had.
Well, is your son-in-law still alive?
Yes.
Where does he live?
Well, he remarried.
Right.
He remarried a vet. Mm-hmm. Alice Wolf.
I see.
And they lived here for several years, and I understand that, and when I say that, we never see him.
Right.
Or no connection.
Mm-hmm.
He and his wife bought a big place up close to Hearn, and I think they both retired now.
I see.
And
I see.
Got a piece of property up there. But
so they didn't
no
have
children.
any. They didn't have any children.
No children.
I see.
So I had 2 brothers and a sister. Mm-hmm. Both my brothers were dead. They were between me and my sister. Mm-hmm. And my sister lived in Port Arthur ever since she got out of Texas University. She graduated in '52 from Texas and went to Port Arthur as a school teacher. Mm-hmm. And lived down there for 50 years. And her husband died about 7 years ago, and she had 2 children living in Dallas, so she moved to Dallas. So.
And she's still living there?
She still lives in Dallas.
I see.
I visit her
Yeah.
fairly regularly, and she visits me.
Right.
In there.
Right.
So we're the only 2 of the family left.
Well, what do you do now? What do you?
Well.
What keeps you busy?
Well, just before I retired, she was looking for something to use for an art studio. Mm-hmm. They lived over on Carter Creek. And she and he came through Hearn one day and saw the old Railway Express office up there. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether you old enough to remember Railway Express or not, but
Yeah, sure.
everything used to go on the train,
Right.
packages, mail and everything, and
Right.
every depot had a Railway Express office.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one there in Hearn, and she saw that, and she came running back to me and said, "Go buy that thing and bring it down and put it in my backyard for a studio for Jimmy." I said, "Joseph, you can't put that thing in Bryan, Texas." And in 1967, I bought 100 acres out west of Snook.
Mm-hmm.
Well, things flopped back and forth, and finally I went up to Hearn one day and found out that it didn't belong to the railroad anymore. It belonged to Mrs. Pino Perron. And I asked her, it was not being used for anything except storage, and I asked her if she'd sell it. She said, yeah, she'd sell it. So I said, well, if I can find a mover that'll move it, would you sell it to me? Yeah. She said, I've been trying to sell it, but nobody figured how to get it out of Hearn.
Uh-huh.
So I did. I found me a mover, and he came up, and we looked at it, and we decided how it could be moved. And so I bought that thing, and we moved it out to my farm.
Uh-huh.
And I worked on that thing for 3 years and made a living house out of it.
I'll be darned.
And then I got a finished carpenter to do some cabinets and little finery work, and we got a living house out there.
I'll be darned.
And we used to go out and stay 2 or 3 days, and being retired, it didn't have to be weekends. And
right.
so he was going to make that his art studio.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we decided that wasn't going to be too good, so he built a little 800 or 900 square foot art studio right behind my building out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's heated and air conditioned, and he used that for all the time until her death.
Right.
And after she died, he painted for a couple of years, and he didn't have the personality to sell or contact people or whatnot, so he quit.
Yeah.
And got a job, got a position with the vet school.
I see.
So he was a...
So is it still out there at Snook? And
oh yeah.
And you go out there and...
You need to see it. Tom, we got a beautiful place out there. I made that living house out of that, and I've got his little house out behind that we call a guest house. I built a 4-car garage out there. We got a 12 by 18 storage building.
Wow. How often do you go out there?
I was there this morning.
Yeah.
I've got a 12 by 18 workshop.
Yeah.
It was my frame shop where I built frames. I've got a 40 by 100 foot hay shed. I had about 1.5 acres lake built on it. It's 102 acres, and one of the real estate men looked at it, told me it had romance.
Yeah.
But it's in the spring when it's real green.
Right.
It's a beautiful place.
Well, I'll bet it is.
It's I've got everything painted the same color, the old railroad colors, gold and milk chocolate.
Right.
Old railroad colors.
Yeah. And where is it? Is it in Snook or just outside of Snook?
You go west from Snook a mile, and the road goes to Tunis.
Uh-huh.
And you go up that road 2 miles and go west on a county road. It's 6 miles out of Snook.
I see.
As a crow would fly from Snook to Caldwell, it's about 6 miles.
I see.
So
I see.
A real estate man back in early 60s told me one time, said, let me sell you a piece of rural property. And I said, well, whenever you got 100 acres to sell that you'd buy, if you were going to buy 100 acres, let me know.
Uh-huh.
So he came to me a year later and said, I got that 100 acres. I said, you want to go see it? And I said, yeah. You know, Tom is the worst looking thing you ever saw. The fences were all down, an old wire gap to go in it, and it had an old house on it that was 100 years old. It wasn't anything you'd want to fix up. And there was chicken pens and hog pens all over the thing. And I don't think they'd ever picked up a can or a box or where they fed cattle. Baling wire was all over the place. It was a mess.
Right.
But I thought it looked like it had potential, so I bought it. And we spent a year cleaning up and tearing down and, you know, just renovating the place.
Right.
And I've spent, and you asked me what I did in retirement. That's where I've spent a world of my retirement.
I'll bet. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
It's a real nice place.
So why don't you just pick up and move out there? Why don't you just move out there?
Oh, I don't know. This house is pretty comfortable.
Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, I'll bet it is.
But the little house is heated and air. The big house just got a wood stove in it.
Right. Right.
I petitioned off a bedroom and a bathroom, and the ceiling in it was 14 feet high.
Wow.
And I made a loft sleeping area in the bathroom up over that bedroom. And
yeah.
the rest of it's open, got a full kitchen with sink, dishwasher, hot water, oven, refrigerator, just a full kitchen.
Yeah.
But then just a big area with a couch and chairs and memorabilia hung over all the walls.
Oh, I'll bet.
Everything from our farm to railroads to...
That's a great story.
Like a museum.
I want to be sure and tell that story on the show. Well, this is great. This is just a great story. I look forward to telling it. Do you have any pictures?
I got worlds of pictures.
You got anything you can show me? I don't need worlds of, but I need
let me.
Anything from.
This is my life. He wrote this up.
Oh wow!
And when they had my 90th birthday up in Dallas, a fella took this book and they extracted that out of it, and totally unbeknownst to me, I have a maid here that works 5 days a week, and she slipped this thing out and sent it to him, and he took it out of there. But that old boy wrote this entire thing with my whole life, and
my
it didn't cost me anything. And
let me look at it. I won't take it from you, but that's just Terry Anderson did it.
I don't know where he got that grant, but he got that grant right at the life of all the acting. You know, that would have cost me a lot of money to have had that done.
Yeah. Wow. Let's see what you got. Here, I'll move over if you want to sit down here.
That's the worst couch to get up.
You get caught down there.
Yeah. Oh. This is about the time I was called active duty. This is my claim to fame right here. We were at Fort Polk once.
Yes, sir.
For summer camp, and they told us we were going to have a VIP visitor, as we always did.
Uh-huh.
And this is a 4-star general. He is the son-in-law of General Patton.
I see.
He came. This is the camp command, the army commander with 3 stars.
Uh-huh.
This is the camp commander with 2 stars.
Uh-huh.
This is his associate with 1 star. And this is me sitting over here.
Uh-huh.
And this is our commander introducing the meeting and then turned it over to me, and I briefed these people
I see.
on our operation.
And you had to get it right.
12 stars.
Wow.
I call that my claim to fame, military-wise.
'63. So that was here.
Fort Polk,
Oh, in Fort Polk.
Louisiana.
Okay.
We were on 2 weeks of duty.
I see.
I've even got my original orders to active duty.
Uh-huh. Well, you got it all.
I told you I had a target to shoot at,
Right.
pull it out in the ocean.
Uh-huh.
That's the kind of a thing I made. These are floats
Right.
in this big sheet
Wow.
up there that
So you'd make these.
I made.
Uh-huh.
Had them made.
Had them made, but you'd supervise the.
Yeah, and we'd pull them out in the ocean for the gunners to shoot at.
I see.
Somebody hit that one. See it?
Right.
These are various pictures of our activities.
Is this you, or is this?
Yeah.
That's you, Lucille.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And my running around, I decided I wanted to go to Italy.
Uh-huh.
I got to the border, and I had written my own orders. That's pretty out of the ordinary. Got to the border, and the Italian guard didn't want me to cross. And I said, well, I've got orders to go. And he said, well, for all I know, you may have written those orders yourself. all I could do to keep from laughing. These.
Are you in this?
Mm-hmm. Think maybe that might be me here.
Was that you?
And
Yeah, it says. Email Undersecretary of Defense.
yeah. Oh,
No, that's Lieutenant Collier. It says.
yeah. I'm in there some one of these. This is me up here.
This is you here,
Yeah, briefing. This is 2-star general.
right? Oh, so that's from that. Yeah, I like that. That's from the same thing there, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah. Right.
Here I am again. This is a 2-star general here. I was a lieutenant colonel at that time. We were on summer camp.
Right.
This was a. I don't know whether. Oh. I had the idea one time about. See, we had a unit out in New Mexico
Uh-huh.
that had to. We had to travel them back and forth to go to summer camp, and I had the idea of letting the Air Force Reserve fly some of our people out there.
Uh-huh.
And so I convinced the people in San Antonio, our headquarters, to let me coordinate with the Air Force Reserve and haul our equipment out by air. I said, you know, someday we may have a disaster in Cuba or Puerto Rico or somewhere that we need to send some engineers down there.
Mm-hmm.
I said, we need to learn to load our equipment in the airplanes, and you know, your people need to learn about it and convince them to do it. And here is loading a 2.5-ton truck.
Wow.
In this transport plane.
Wow.
I've got a better picture over here somewhere of. Oh,
is that a promotion there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's when I got promoted to full colonel, probably.
Uh-huh.
That was the brigade commander.
Right.
These type of things we do at summer camp, bridges. I want to get this one picture over here. Here's the trip I made, and we got involved with one of the military bases in San Antonio. We were going to build a golf course.
Right.
And we convinced them to let us work on that as a project, you know, to build roads and bridges and golf pro shop and all this. I said, you know, there's no difference in that and military digging and so forth. And we did that 4 summers. We worked on that golf course, and we did everything except we didn't plant the grass and do the finery.
Right.
But doing that for the Air Force, I could get an airplane anytime I needed to go somewhere. And this is one of the times that they sent me a plane to make one of my military trips.
I see.
They even put the star on the airplane.
Is that Al Jones there?
I believe
Is that Major Alvin Jones?
I believe it is.
Yeah. It looks like him.
I think this was the diving detachment, maybe.
I see.
We even designed our own shoulder pads.
Uh-huh.
This was when we changed commands, and this was the Army commander changing the flags. This is me accepting the new flag. This another picture of me and some of my officers. This was something interesting. We had a unit down in New Orleans, and there was another unit just like ours down there, and we had a better record than they did. And the Army commander told me once that they wanted us to go down and spend a weekend with that outfit down there and see something that could rub off on them, so to speak. Anyhow, we went down, and the commander down there was some politician in New Orleans, and you know, Louisiana is so full of politics. And they were having a horse race down there that weekend, and he managed to get the horse race people to name one of the races as the Army Reserve race. And my wife and I went down and presented the jockey with the winning jockey with his trophy that day.
I'll be darned.
In New Orleans.
How about that?
This is the picture I wanted.
Wow.
This was down in Corpus Christi. We were loading people and equipment in those planes and flew them to New Mexico for summer camp.
Wow.
I had a very, very enjoyable military tour. Where this was?
71.
Oh, a football game.
This is the Corps March in? You in the reviewing stand there? Yeah.
I've had that privilege several times.
Right.
The commandant out there has invited me several times to be on the reviewing stand, and that's a pretty good honor, you know it?
Absolutely.
This was our chaplain. I was pinning some promotion on the chaplain. There you are. Major Caffrey. I attended a luncheon one time when General Westmoreland was there. You know who he was.
Oh, sure. The commander in Vietnam.
And he sat right across the table from me, and I had quite a chat with him.
Right.
I got a note here for every day that I was on active duty.
Wow.
And where I went and how long I was there. From the time I joined the reserve till the retired.
From after you came back from,
Yeah, this after I got back.
Back from Europe.
Yeah.
That's a great book. Wow. Well, if I can, I'd like to borrow this book from you just for a couple of days, and I'll give it back to you on Thursday.
Sure.
And
just lay this in there.
Yeah, I'll lay that in there. And I'll take some of these pictures and I'll scan them, and it'll help me get some more information. And I will give this all back to you on Thursday.
Cool.
I might borrow that just for some background information. So I'll just keep it all right here, just like that.
Okay.
Thursday at 2:30. You know where KAMU TV is? You know where the TV station is there, right? Yeah. Okay. If you could be there around 2:15, and you've seen the show.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just as simple as what you see. Just you and I just sitting there and we're just talking. And I'll just sort of lead the conversation, and you'll talk, and we'll show some pictures. And the problem is always trying to get as much told in 28 and a half minutes that we have to do it in. So that's always the challenge.
That's a great show, and I really appreciate being
Well, I enjoy doing it. You'll be the 112th veteran that I've done.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, who's the fellow that's working with you on that?
Well, that is, you saw last weekend.
Yeah.
His name is Kyle Netterville. What happened to me was, Kyle did about 6 or 7 shows for me a year ago, because I came down with, in August of last year, of 07, I came down with Bell's palsy.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it hit me. And it hit me hard. So for about 6 months, I was pretty much unpresentable on TV. I couldn't talk very well, and the whole side of my face was pretty paralyzed, and so I could still do my stuff on the radio, but that was only if I held my face back like that to strengthen up my lip. That's the only way I could really talk. And so it affected me pretty hard for about 6 months. So we didn't do any shows for about a month and a half. And then after it looked like I wasn't going to be able to come back anytime soon, Kyle came in and did about 6 shows for me. And that's what you're seeing now. What I do is, on the shows, I alternate. Every other week is a repeat of a show that first aired about a year ago.
Oh, okay.
And then every other week is a new show that we've just done in the last 4 or 5 weeks. So what you saw last week, I think it was with a fellow named Hugh Shockey.
That's right.
That was one of those shows where I was out of commission, and,
Well,
Kyle was doing the show.
I wondered, because you told me last Tuesday that there wouldn't be you were not going to have a show this week. You were not.
No, there's a show on every week.
No, that you were not going to do one this week.
Right. I wasn't going to record one. I wasn't going to record one.
So I wasn't even looking for one.
Oh, yeah. No, there's a show on every week.
Okay.
But I just didn't record one. But last week, that was one of those repeat shows from a year ago.
You mean all of his shows, all the ones that he has are repeats?
From a year ago. Now this next week will be a new show that I did just about 4 or 5 weeks ago. I forget who it is.
No, when are we going to be on?
We'll be on in about 4 or 5 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll record it this Thursday.
Okay.
But it won't be on for about 4 or 5 weeks. Okay. I'll let you know exactly when it'll be on, and I'll get you copies and DVDs and all of that kind of stuff.
I don't ever miss any of them.
Well, good. That's good. That's good.
In fact, some of them I watched